What if the key to a thriving relationship isn't about finding the right person, but about becoming the best version of yourself? In today's episode, our guest reveals powerful truths about how self acceptance and healing shape the love we attract. As a certified relationship coach, teacher, author, and a podcast host, she'll share insights and guidance on transforming your relationships from within and offer practical advice on supporting those you love through challenging times, including chronic illness. This is the story of It Begins With You with Jillian Turecki. Jillian, so nice to have you on.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
And congrats, this is your first book, correct?
Oh, yes, it is my first.
How tough was that to write a book your first time? I hear it's quite the endeavor.
It is. You really have to have the fire in your, like, you have to have a compelling reason to write it. Otherwise,
No,
you'll never make it. You'll never write it. You'll never
exactly.
write it. Yeah.
And that compelling reason was about, your relationships, self-love, all of that. Can you go into kind of what guided you throughout that process to write this book?
Yeah. So honestly, my whole journey began 25 years ago or more when I found yoga.
Mm.
And it was like love at first sight. I don't believe in love at first sight, but for me in yoga, it was love at first sight. And so for many years I taught yoga
Okay.
and I taught at studios and I also taught individually. I worked with a lot of couples and I started to see that there was a relationship between a very strong relationship between how our bodies feel and how our minds feel. And that we can't, it's very difficult to feel mentally well if we don't feel physically well, and very difficult to feel mentally well if we don't feel physically, and the other way around, right? Physically well if we
Yep.
don't feel mentally well. Um, and I also saw it as incredibly nourishing to not only your relationship with yourself, but also relationship with others. And I saw the how yoga and doing this with the body and the breath, and because yoga to me, the practice of the physical practice of yoga and also meditation, all of it really is the practice of toning the nervous system. It's toning your
Yep.
physiology. And so you're built your the goal, the aim is to build resilience and also flexibility. And that is a metaphor for how to approach life. And but about 7 years into teaching it, which was about 10 years into practice, 7 to 12 years, 7 to 10 years, I started to feel that there was something missing, that I wanted to do more but with my life, but I didn't know what that was. And I also wanted to get married and have kids and go that route. So, and, but I felt like there was some way that I wasn't like maximizing my full potential, but I didn't know what that was. So I ended up meeting the man who would become my husband and then ex-husband. And that was a very difficult journey.
Mm.
And the marriage only lasted 2 years and it ended abruptly. And he broke up with me over text, and my mom was dying of lung cancer. And so everything sort of came to a screeching halt in my life, and my life fell apart. And I became obsessed with two things. One, how am I going to feel better? How am I going to get
Mhm.
myself out of this catastrophic hole? And how, what the hell does it mean? Or what the hell does it take to make a relationship work? Because I was horrified by the fact that, going through a divorce or separation and being of a certain age did not match what I believed my identity to be. My identity was, I'm a yogi. I've done the work. We met in our late 30s. Like this should be able to work out. I even took a year off of dating before I met him.
Mhm.
I was ready, even though upon reflection, I was actually quite vulnerable when I met him. And so this idea of, put together, grounded yogi who on the outside looks like she has everything together, and then
Yeah.
going through a divorce, and going through a divorce after a relationship that like never even like ever got to blossom. Like it
Mm.
died before it blossomed. And that's when I started my journey into figuring out what makes a relationship work. And I got into relationship coaching, and I thought this is definitely what I was put on this earth to do, was to help people on this deeper level. And I'm a teacher by nature. And I thought I have to teach this to people. And this is sort of how the book was born. I felt very compelled to share this because um, it's fortunately it's been changing lives already, just in the way I help people, just my methodology. I've been blessed to help a lot of people. And so it seemed like the natural progression. So that's sort of like the medium version story of how that
Yeah.
book was birthed. Yeah.
No, it's your hero story, and it's a great one. It's one people really need to share a lot. It's the reason I started a podcast called Your Healthier Story, to share the stories that help
Yeah.
others figure out their path and their journey in healing. And it's the thing we brought up briefly before we even got started, that sometimes that missing piece. We're always looking for like the physical pieces. Is it my nutrition? Is it, my
Yeah.
workout regimen? Why am I not feeling my best? Or even in a state of chronic disease, as 60+% of us are these days.
Mm-hmm.
But it really kind of goes to this missing piece of the relationships in our lives, relationships with ourselves. Why is
Yes.
it that you think so many people overlook that fact and really start to look at more of the physical sides of what can I do, and look outside of themselves? I mean, medicine as a whole looks, put it on the
Yeah.
doctor, right? The doctor heals you. But
I
the
think
truth
it's
is, it's on us.
exactly,
That's why it's like
exactly.
it begins with you, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, if we're talking about relationships and how it relates to health, there's nothing that's going to influence and impact your mental health more than your most important relationships.
yeah,
The quality of your relationship with your parent, your family members. If you're in a romantic relationship, there is no one's going to have more influence over your overall well-being than your romantic partner, because it's where we are most vulnerable. It is where we are, the stakes are high. With family, you're just like, we're kind of stuck together. With a romantic partner, you might have that closeness that feels like you're stuck together, and that level of commitment. But, we all know that a relationship can end. And
yes,
and people, if you don't, eh, people don't have to stay. People don't have to stay. And so this idea that, we just haven't, as a society, understood the value of a relationship and of relationships in our lives, and the quality of our relationships. I know Esther Perel says this a lot, but I've heard it
mm,
elsewhere. The quality of our relationships really determine the quality of our lives. And I would say that a romantic relationship in particular. And so in the past, also a lot of romantic relationships, many, many, many years ago, before the surge of romanticism, they were mostly, our parents knew each other. We know each other
mhm,
from the local church or synagogue or, mosque. Or there's arranged marriages in certain cultures. It was like it made sense. Our families know each other. We come from a similar background. We're going to build a family together. And today, that's very different. Everyone's looking for a soulmate.
mhm,
Everyone's looking for that feeling of intensity and aliveness that we get from watching a rom-com, or
yes,
reading or looking at, art, or reading certain literature.
yep,
And so, we get very heavily involved, and the stakes are really high. And
mm,
so, because of that, if it's not going well, it will really impact your whole life. Um, and this, again, it goes beyond just the romantic relationship. And so, when we're talking about mental health and physical health, we know, like it's now becoming sort of well known. Science is backing this, that our mental health affects our physical health and our physical health can affect our mental health. So if you're not feeling well physically, it behooves a person to look at their lives to see what's not working. And maybe it's not even their relationship to another. Maybe it's their relationship to themselves. Maybe
Yeah.
they feel a bit stuck in life. Maybe they don't feel like they are living the life that they really want to live. And so when we feel that stuckness, we will feel that dis-ease within
Mhm.
ourselves, which will then manifest in back pain,
Yeah.
allergies, all sorts of things, because it affects us emotionally so much.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned back pain. I know so many people that have back pain that they just don't know where. It wasn't an injury, it wasn't anything in their lives.
Yeah,
You start to pry back those layers of the onion and say, okay, where is it? And they start to talk about, oh, well, my relationship isn't that good with my wife, with my partner, with other people, even
I'm stressed
myself.
out. Yeah, I'm
Right. And they
stressed
don't make
out.
a
Yeah,
connection because it's hard to say this poor relationship is a physical ailment. They don't see that connection to it.
right,
How
right,
does
right.
how does one start to unravel that truth when they're not seeing it? Like, how do you start to realize that the relationship is the source of the pain?
Well, I think it's taking an honest inventory of just, what have my stress levels been? Um, am I where I want to be in life? Um, are there certain things that need to change? Are there things that are changing perhaps too quickly in my life that I feel overwhelmed? Do I feel stagnant?
Hmm.
So it's really just having that awareness and starting to take that inventory of that necessary self-examination that
Yeah.
we all have to do in order to figure some things out.
Yeah, it seems like everyone these days distracts themselves from the internal discussion, right? We go to social media and just,
Yeah.
Netflix or whatever. And
Yeah.
not many people sit with themselves and just ask, where am I right now? How am I
Yeah, I
feeling?
know.
Do I feel stagnant? Why is that? And just sit with
Yeah.
themselves, right?
Yes.
Isn't that a big part that we need to put in the work and the time that's uncomfortable to really go inside and ask those questions and sit and ruminate.
Yeah, we don't want to ruminate.
Yeah.
We don't want to ruminate. We're not taught this I mean, this is what quote unquote therapy is supposed to be used for, right? But this idea of mindfulness and self-awareness to just be like it's emotional intelligence. It's emotional intelligence and then it's emotional fitness. It's being able to, oh, what am I feeling right now? Where am I feeling it? Because
Hmm.
we live in a society where everything is a reaction. And so we're very habituated towards, because feelings are faster than thoughts, we will feel something and then we'll immediately react, as opposed to, I feel something. What is that all about? Am I
Hmm.
really angry or am I upset? Where do I feel that in my body? What just happened? Like, this is what regulating emotions are. And this is what emotional intelligence is. This is what self awareness is. This is what yoga is aimed um, to kind of develop within a person. It's what meditation is sort of meant to develop within a person. But culturally speaking, we're not really taught this. It's starting to become popular now in the zeitgeist, but we don't learn this in school.
Right.
And most of our parents didn't learn it either. So learning how to build that emotional intelligence muscle is so important. And then the emotional fitness part is, okay, how long have I been sitting in this sort of self-pity stage? Or what kind of emotional patterns do I have? What's happening, and that I'm am I vacillating between depression, anxiety, or anger and sadness? Like what else, so it's about being able to see, like, okay, I'm stuck in an emotional pattern right now that's not serving me. Why? And then usually when you dig with the person, there's some sort of internal conflict. Maybe there's an external conflict with a particular person in their life. Maybe there's an internal conflict in terms of, like, I wanted to be an artist, but I'm a lawyer. What am I supposed to do
Mhm.
with that? So this really is what the work is. The work is really just to question our programming and our conditioning, to do this necessary self-examination when we're not feeling well in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
That's what the work is. And yes, it can be, to your point, very uncomfortable, because
Mhm.
it means then we have to face something that is universally true and very difficult to face, is which is that most of our problems, not all, but a lot of our problems are there because we are in some way standing in our own way.
Mhm.
And I think that, as hard as that might be to confront, I also think it's incredibly relieving, because if you're standing in your way, then you have the power to get out of your own way.
Right.
Versus if someone else is standing in your way, like, you don't have any control.
Yeah.
But that's ultimately where it is. And I think we live in a society. There's a great book called Dopamine Nation. Like, we're very
Mhm.
driven by pleasure. You know,
Yeah.
we try to avoid pain at all costs, and we try to attain pleasure at all costs. So if we're not feeling great, if we're distressed in some way, our natural inclination is to find something to get that's going to release dopamine so that
Mhm.
we can feel better. It's not natural or instinctual for us to go, oh, maybe there's something deeper going on here. But we can train ourselves to be self reflective in that way. And when we can, we tend to be better partners.
Right. And that goes so well with what you see happening so much in medicine, healthcare, disease, is that we look for the quick fix. The
Yeah.
pain, there's a, an anti-inflammatory or a pain reliever, just pop the pill. Rather
Yeah.
than going the harder route, it is harder to start to, really work through the pain and figure out why it's there. But do you feel like we have to start giving up on short-term fixes and really looking at long-term solutions here?
Well, what do you mean by that?
Do we have to look past, because I feel like what you like, a lot of this is the dopamine nation thing. It's just quick fix, right? A quick hit of something. And in society as a whole, I believe that that's what we're told. We're told, all right, you have pain, take the pain. You have a headache, take the aspirin, right?
Yeah.
Instead of a long-term look at it, maybe still take that, but also with an understanding of, why am I having this? Right? Going to the whys, maybe let's relate that to relationship. Why am I in a habit of choosing the wrong person rather than quickly jumping to the next person, online dating, something else
Yeah.
like that? The quick
It's
fix of, I need someone in my life quickly, let me do this,
yeah.
and not actually finding a solution. And like, but they say it's the solution is the pill, the online dating, the keeping yourself busy.
Yeah, I know. And look, I mean, sometimes you have to take the aspirin, right? Like
Sure.
sometimes, sometimes you have to take the Advil, and sometimes you have to get back on the horse again and start dating.
Yeah.
So it's not about, I don't think that it's a fine line. We don't want to encourage endless self-examination, because then we
Right.
become endlessly self-obsessed.
Yeah.
So, right. And then it's like, I have a headache, and then I'm going to look at the why. But if I'm getting a headache every day,
Right.
then we have to look at why. if I just randomly have a headache, what could be a million things. It could be I didn't have enough water, or something
Sure.
like that. And I'm just a human. I have a headache, whatever. It could be my hormones. It could be I didn't sleep well. It could be I ate something. But if I'm waking up every morning with that headache, then something is wrong. When it comes to a relationship, because you bring up a really good point of jumping from relationship to relationship. Look, I think that the dating pool would be a much cleaner pool if people, after they ended their relationship, took the time to self reflect to see how they contributed to whatever did
Yes.
not work in their relationship. And if people did that, then the dating pool would be, like I said, a lot healthier, a lot cleaner.
Right. Right. It's a disease dating pool in some ways.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it has been, it's
Yeah.
not even, it's just, it has been. People poison the pool because they're not actually taking time to reflect on what happened in their relationship.
Yeah. And part of that also is probably a lot of people just don't have that self-love and are seeking it from someone else to complete
Yes,
them,
sure.
right? And didn't
Yes.
take that time. And I do see that a lot. And that word self-love, though, is really difficult to assess. You
It
got a lot of
is.
confident, cocky people out there that are beautiful and, intelligent, and yet maybe they don't have that true self-love and keep seeking it in someone else.
Yeah.
How do you, combat that? How do you, find a solution to you make this the truth number four, right? You have to love yourself. But
Yeah. So
how do you
in that,
define that?
yeah, it's a great question. So in that chapter, I go a little deep into that. I define self love ultimately as self acceptance,
Mm,
which means that you learn, you hold yourself in high regard despite your ambivalence towards yourself.
right.
So you see yourself as a valuable, worthy human being, worthy of love, deserving of a good life. I mean, you're not owed a good life. You have to put in the work for a good life, but
Yes.
you deserve that. Um, even though there are parts of you that suck, right? Like we all,
Right.
it's just it. And I think that it's that fine balance of like, oh, I really believe that at the core, everyone is good. I really
Hmm.
do at the core. But what we do have is some faulty conditioning, some bad habits. Some people, there's no question, there's some people who are really, really, really messed up. And, I don't know if they'll ever get unmessed up, you
Sure.
know, but for the most part, the things, if you have an awareness of the things that you're not, that are sort of your shortcomings, but you accept yourself anyway because you understand that that is part of the human experience. It doesn't mean that you don't work on those things. It doesn't mean that you don't keep it on in check. I mean, when we meet someone, what we really what we really need to hear from someone else that we don't even realize, what we need to hear from each other is, this is how I'm great. This is how I'm difficult to live with. But I'm aware, just so you know. Like
Yeah.
that's it, like that's sort of like the thing. And if we can't, if we can't accept the parts of ourselves that are not our highest nature, then what we do is, see, the more I believe that, and everyone is guilty of this, but the more or the less I should say, we accept ourselves, the more we will unconsciously hope for someone to come into our lives who actually embodies the perfection that we wish we had.
Mm,
Right? It's like, because if we can't accept that in ourselves, we certainly can't accept that in someone else. And part of the reason why we have to be flexible with people and accept some of their shortcomings is because we want them to accept ours. Now, there's a line there. And there's a fine line because I've worked with plenty of people who tolerate way too much crap from others. So it's really about understanding um, what is intolerable to you. And then can you just live with the rest? And that doesn't mean that you don't say, hey, I love you, but this habit of yours, like really would like for you to work on that, you know? But that's not the same thing as this habit of yours, I don't want to be with you anymore because of it.
Hmm.
And again, it depends it depends what it is. But
Right.
the main message is we are all flawed. No one is perfect. No one is going to love you unconditionally. Like there's always going to be some conditions, but uh the goal is for us to love each other with as few conditions as possible. And those conditions being more like you're mean, like you're disrespectful, you're mean
Hmm.
to me, you cheat, like these things, not sometimes you get a little anxious or you're having a bad day or you didn't do the dishes or something like that. So yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, let me ask you about that because a lot of people I know that are kind of going through things and it's, slight depression or just anxiety based off it and slipping into that sort of if this continues, this will probably
Mm-hmm.
manifest itself in something worse and disease and all sorts of things that you'll just suffer because of. How does
Yeah.
someone start to work on that and bring that up with their partner? Case in point, I know someone that is in a loving relationship, but every time he comes home, the partner is just leaving a mess, and he keeps saying it would really be great. This really helps ease my mind if I come home to a happy home that's well
Yeah.
organized. And the other person
Yeah.
is just saying, "Why are you making this such a big deal?" And then he
That's a
suffers because of
problem.
it.
Yeah,
And
but you know what?
yeah,
That's a bigger problem than you think.
yeah. And some people would say, well, maybe it's just me and I have to, and it's just life, right? And I just need to just accept that.
They probably shouldn't live together.
Yeah.
I mean, I have pretty radical, point of view about this. Maybe they would be happy not living together. They would be happier in a relationship not living together. Listen, living with someone is not easy. And if you live together, like you really do have to be, I mean, sort of aligned in how clean and or messy you want the house to be. Look, there are some people who are so incredibly controlling and so type A that that to live with them is impossible. But
Right.
overall, I think that if one person is very messy and one other person is very neat, they probably shouldn't live together. And
Mm,
but they can have a great relationship.
right.
But it's like, okay, so then what if you want kids? Um, Figure out a way, hire someone to come and clean if you can. But you've got to, I guess the larger point that I'm trying to make is you have to figure that out because believe it or not, someone being really messy and someone being really clean and living together can actually lead to a breakup.
Yeah. And then there are the underlying belief systems too, that, well, I can't not live together because societal just norms are that you should and have to live together. How much of that, the belief systems we have, do we need to really start to look at and see is that serving my best good to just follow societal norms because that is the belief system?
I believe that really at the essence of there's that the ends at excuse me, the essence of doing the quote unquote work on oneself is challenging your belief system.
Yeah.
You don't and and when you challenge your belief system, there are certain beliefs you might say, no, I'm keeping this one. But that really is, that really is at the core. Challenge the beliefs that are in any way leading to more negative states of mind,
Mm,
more stress. So yeah, you have to challenge your conditioning and belief system. I think that people who do that tend to live much more authentic lives.
Yeah.
Why, maybe living together doesn't work for like you as a couple, and you're thriving because of it.
Right. And you talk about authenticity here in truth number five. You speak about, speak up and tell the truth, right?
Yeah.
A lot
Yeah.
of people feel are a little fearful of communicating their truth because of the conflict that may come from the truth. But it's better
Yes.
to step into the conflict and communicate that. Is a part of that also how you communicate your truth?
100%. So, first, I will say is that people avoid the truth all the time because they're afraid of what it might uncover.
Yeah.
They're afraid of the other person's reaction. They're afraid that they're not going to be enough for the other person if they tell the truth. Because sometimes telling the truth is, I'm just going to start to, I'm going to stop pretending to be who I always thought you wanted me to be.
Mm,
And that's not the other person, that's me. I'm so used to doing that. Yes, communication is an art form. I really do believe that.
yeah.
And you don't have to be perfect, but there are certain principles that you need to follow if you want to have better relationships and more effective communication. And one is leading with love. So instead of going into the conversation with you statements, you do this, you do that,
Yeah.
blame, and you go more to I statements
Yeah.
and we statements. Um, One is also I think directness is very important. So
Mhm.
rather than going into like a whole story about whatever it is that you're going to say, you want to lead with love, but also be direct in what it is that you're going to say as best as you can. Vulnerability. So sometimes, many people, especially if they're experiencing a lot of emotion, don't have the words to articulately describe what it is that they're feeling. So sometimes you just have to say, I'm feeling really overwhelmed,
Yeah.
or I'm feeling all this tightness in my chest. I just need to breathe. I just need a moment. Believe it or not, that's actually very artful and very skilled communication because when you convey that, you are immediately speaking to the human that's in the other person because everyone can relate to that feeling. And it brings compassion out, it brings empathy out in a person.
Right.
So so again, there's certain principles that if we follow in communication will make our communication much more effectively. So it's not about just like telling the truth and being blunt and not caring about the other person. It's really just about no more avoiding the truth and no more um, avoiding your own truth because telling the truth in a relationship begins with telling the truth to ourselves.
Mm,
Because most of the time we're lying to ourselves.
yes.
And so it's part of that chapter is really helping the person, the listener, or the reader, I should say. I'm so used to podcasting, the reader to really think about how they might be not honoring themselves inside of a
Yeah.
relationship or in their lives. Yeah.
Yeah. That communication of truth has to come from a place of love, compassion, like a higher level of consciousness and not an
Yeah.
attacking way. It reminds me of like
Yeah.
an episode on The Office with Jim and Pam where they start going to therapy and they start every sentence with, "To speak my truth, I feel you are doing this wrong." And the other,
That's
"Well, to
really
speak
funny.
my truth," and they go back and forth. And then their
Yeah.
coworker thinks they're high.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
Uh-huh.
but
But and by the way, you don't want to say my truth is. You don't want to do that. You just
right.
want to say, I might be, this might be a story that I'm making up, but the story in my head is blah blah
Yeah.
blah.
Yeah, and leave that openness to communication both ways. That's not just attacking and one side is the true truth. because everyone has their own truths to the relationship also, and have to find
Yes.
that.
Yes. And it's also about making sure the other person understands. So it's very useful for the other person to say, okay, so what I heard you say is this, so that you don't have to agree. You don't have to agree,
Hmm.
but you do have to leave that conversation with the understanding that the two of you actually comprehended what the other one said.
Right. Truth number 8 was a scary one when you read it. It's, no one is coming to save you, right? And
Uh-huh.
some people like, whoa, that hits hard, right? Can you
Yeah.
elaborate on that truth of no one's coming to save you?
I think that we think that there's going to be this one person who's going to come into our lives. And when we get that relationship and when we find that quote unquote right person, that everything else is going to fall into place in life.
Mm.
And it's a very heavy burden to place on another person, this expectation that they can make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
And whereas I think that you are definitely selecting a good partner for you when you select someone who adds value to your life, who can put a smile on your face, who makes you feel supported and safe and understood. They can't actually meet all your needs all the time. They can't heal your trauma for you,
Yep.
and they can't fulfill you. That is an inside job. And so a relationship should make us happier, but it can't actually make us happy. And it will feel as though it is in the beginning, because in the beginning we're drunk on all the hormones and the love chemicals, and we meet this person and they are the catalyst, they are the stimulus that triggers inside of us an aliveness and love that may have been dormant for a very long time inside of us. So we think this person is the ticket
Yep.
to my freedom, to my happiness. And, but then, just wait until a year, 5 years, 10 years go by and you realize, yeah, nothing could be farther from the truth. That ultimately we are responsible for our own happiness. And, and that's a tough one to kind of confront, but it
Mm.
will make our relationships much better when we think this person is like they're the ice cream of my life. They make life sweeter.
Mm-hmm.
But the protein, the fat, the carb, like, the meat and potatoes, the things that are actually going to like make it so that I can get out of bed, like that's on me.
Yep.
That's
Yep.
something that I have to find meaning in life. And if I just depend on this person for this happiness, I'm going to get very angry at them because they're going to fail me miserably constantly. And I'm going to, um, then I'm going to forget how to make myself happy. And so it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And I
Yep.
think that people know this intellectually, but yet I'm begging people to examine their sort of unconscious dreams and desires and what they think a relationship is really meant to do in your life
Yeah.
or meant
I
to
think
serve.
there's so much of that, the personal responsibility, even in the relationship of two.
Oh,
There's still
yeah.
an onus on you to do your part of what
Always.
you always, right? And that
Yeah.
that yeah, that's such an important message throughout life itself. It's like, yeah, no one's coming to save. It is on you. You could be happier with that person, sure, but it's still on you. And people sometimes forget that and they want
Hmm.
someone to be their savior, knight in shining armor.
Yes. Yes. They do. And part of and part of why some people want that savior is because they feel broken inside.
Mm,
And so they want that person to come into their lives and put all the pieces of them back together. But that just creates a really messed up dynamic. Then you're going to attract the person who is a fixer of broken things. And then your relationship is only going to work as long as you're broken.
mm,
And you also want to be able to see yourself as more resilient than that, that you don't actually need someone to come and put the pieces back together. So the no one is coming to save you is really about how do you see yourself? Why do you see yourself in such a way that you need to be saved?
yeah. One of the things that I feel in the book was really, stood out, but many people probably would never think about this is the last truth here. You
Mhm.
must make peace with your parents.
Yeah.
Talk about that because I feel like a lot of people have very complicated relationships with their
Yeah.
parents, especially in
Yeah.
this generation where so much has changed from when they grew up, or so many beliefs and how you should do things is different from your parents. Why do we need to make peace with that?
Well, because if you don't, basically, our relationship with our parents are going to show up in our romantic relationships, whether
Mm,
we like it for not, rightly or wrongly, for better or for worse. I had a very complicated relationship with my father. There was a lot of emotional abuse in my childhood. Um, so making just to be clear, if you've been molested or severely abused, I don't think you need to make peace with your parent.
mhm,
I think it's best that you just never speak to that person again. But making peace with your parent, number one, doesn't mean that you actually have to have like a great relationship with them. You can still have very strong boundaries. Number two, you could have a wonderful relationship with your parent, but making peace with the parent with whom you have a loving relationship might mean breaking up with them as the leaders of your belief system. So
mhm,
you're changing your relationship with them. So instead of being a lawyer when you really want to be an artist because you always felt like your parents really wanted you to be a lawyer, making peace with your parent is basically saying, I'm going to now live the life that I want to live and I'm not going to be afraid of your judgment of me because that's not our relationship anymore. Making peace with your parent is learning how to relate to your parent even if it's just in your mind as an adult rather than through the filter of your childhood. And so it's changing any story or narrative that might have that might have its hands gripped around your neck, constricting your breathing so that you're not living the life that you're meant to live because of some story that you have around a parent. So making peace with your parent is really making peace with the story that you have about your parent, and that comes with a different perspective, and that's what that truth is all about, and it will set you free. And
mhm.
I felt very qualified to write that question, to write that chapter because of my own relationship with my father. So I think that it's going to make people gasp when they see it, but I think that reading it is going to be life changing for them.
Absolutely. I mean, I've noticed that how impactful it could be, even with certain therapies like family constellation work and things like
Uh-huh.
that Bert
Sure.
Hellinger put through, and telling those stories from a familial standpoint of where our kind of blockages are that are creating such trauma and emotional distress, and releasing that, right? The
Yes.
release of that and making peace without actually having to have that person there that may have harmed you, hurt you, or done something. Right. So
Yes.
it's so
Yes.
important in your own healing and own self-love journey.
Yes. Even if the making peace is recognizing that whatever love you did not receive as a child has nothing to do with your worth and being able to see the experience of your parent and why they may have acted that way so that you can free yourself from that narrative.
Yeah. Jillian, a lot of what we talked about here are relationships that are actually there, but a lot of people are searching for relationships. And it's a complicated, like we said, the dating pool is a bit diseased.
Yeah.
People, let's say people have done the work to get themselves to a place of self-love and worked on themselves. What is your advice for kind of going through the dating scene right now where it's all very social and app related and people are ghosting and all these things? I
Yeah.
mean, we were talking about what, you're from New York City. I've done that dating stuff and it's tough, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a minefield. It's like, what's your advice for those people that are searching for it?
I think so have a little fun with it. Be
Mm,
very clear about what your boundaries are, about what your non-negotiables are. Um, if you want a long-term relationship, if you're looking to get married, be long-term relationship and marriage material. Now, what do
mm,
I mean by that? It means that you're very, very clear about what it is that you want and you are open to get to know someone as long as you feel good when you are around them and that you feel like there's some like-mindedness there. And when you don't feel that, you're out.
mhm,
Um, you don't let people um infiltrate your entire system when you barely even know them. So you keep your life even when you're dating. You have to really keep in check your desperation and be really honest with yourself about your desperation. I think that that's, it's such a taboo word, but I think we would all be better off normalizing when we're feeling a little desperate
mhm.
and just to kind of be sort of mindful of that. I think that you have to be very mindful of what the role sex is going to be. Like, are you going to partake in casual sex? If so, why? Why you're doing that. Um, so just being very intentional.
Yeah. The intentions lead to manifestation, correct? It's like when
Yeah,
you
I
have
think
those
so.
good intentions, you could manifest that person into your life.
Yeah,
But when there's ambiguity and vagueness to what you're really doing, just to find somebody is just not enough. You
it's
have to
not.
set those intentions, right?
I really believe so. Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much in this book, obviously nine truths, but so much more into it. What are you hoping listeners or readers, again, a podcast, a
I know
book,
we're
yeah.
yeah.
What are you hoping readers take away from, going through that book? What's like the one core principle you'd love for them to take away?
I actually want people to feel very empowered. I
Mm,
want them to feel like that they they need to be the change that they wish to see in their love lives and that they can. That it doesn't matter what their trauma is. It doesn't matter what their past is. If they are willing to really take on the principles in this book, I've seen it happen. Like you can actually turn your love life, whether you're in a relationship or single or heartbroken, you can turn it around. You really do have more agency and power over your life than you actually believe yourself to have.
yeah. No, it's a beautiful message. It's like when you have that empowered healing, so much falls into place, right? And
Yes.
you just feel different rather than like
Yeah, you
we said,
do.
like just this despair and I can't do anything. Like that almost victimhood mentality really is tough to break through and you're just not going to be a happy person with that.
No, no. And look, I mean, I definitely can fall into patterns of learned helplessness and feeling like a victim and it's very difficult. So it's you don't have to feel shame about it, but you do I want to try to get people out of that narrative so that they can make some really great change in their life.
Yeah, amazing. And where can people learn more about you, pick up the book?
Sure. So it's jillianturecki.com/book, and that's where you can pick up the book. I had, and then jillianturecki.com, Jillian Turecki all over social media, Instagram, and then my podcast, Jillian on Love, which is on, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for this. It was really enlightening, and I
Oh,
really
thank
hope it
you.
impacts people to live their best lives and accept their truths.
Oh, well, thank you so much for having me. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
And for those listening, go to jillianturecki.com. That's JILLIANTURECKI. And the book comes out on January 14th, so please do pick it up. We'll also include links to her social channels, show notes, everything. And until next time, continue writing your own healing story.